So thanks again, everyone who's joined us today. If you're coming back for webinar number 4, you're doing well. We've got 8 more after this. If you're here for your first one, thank you for coming. Really excited for the discussion today. A great group of people speaking. This is webinar number 4 of the series, Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero, presented by CFO Tech Stack. Once again, my name's Jack Teal. I'm the APAC commercial lead at Mayday. We're on a mission to mend month-end for larger Xero businesses, beginning with the needs who are multi-entity, talking about intercompany reconciliations, recharges, those kinds of things. As a little bit of background on myself, I started my career as an accountant at PwC about 10 years ago, a little bit of accounting, a little bit of audit, where I did my chartered as well. I then worked in a small practice, working with SMBs and SMEs, and have spent the last 5 years working among the Xero tech ecosystem, which has been awesome. And I haven't lost that passion or my bullishness as to where Xero as a platform is going long term. It's great to see so many businesses who started on Xero 10, 15 years ago have grown up, they're using it, they're multinational, they're multi-entity, they're large, they have big teams, and they're still making Xero work for them. So we're really glad to be speaking to you all today, because I imagine a lot of you are in that boat. And a big part of the reason why this series is even running is because we just kind of identified a lack of content for you guys. It's great to be here on behalf of CFO Tech Stack, speaking with the larger Xero audience. I might pause here from my side and hand over quickly for introductions from the panel. So Tyler, if I can go to you first, kick it off.
Hey, I'm Tyler Caskey, one of the partners at the Bean Counters. We're a group of accountants and system engineers that help businesses around Australia and now the world install systems. And, our goal is to try to take the pain out of change. And very similar to Jack, I did a lot of time in public practice, business services, but also worked as like a financial controller as a CFO for about 12, 13 years before coming back into practice.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Over to you, Natalie.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie from Beyond CFO. So I'm a chartered accountant as well, started in a similar background as Jack and Tyler. I now work as an outsourced CFO with SMEs. I'm really passionate about helping businesses not just succeed, but thrive. So we work together basically to understand the mechanics of driving profitability and success through efficiencies and decision-making around, I guess, all sorts of things. But one of the key things is making sure their financial information goes through the ecosystem and all of those things, as well as processes to, get things working really well. So, I love working with everyone on that.
Cool. Thanks, Natalie. Over to you, Cale.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. My name is Cale. I'm the Director of Sales at Weel. We work with thousands of Australian businesses and tens of thousands of employees to help improve spend management processes in their business. Prior to Weel, I worked for Xero, and prior to that, very similar to Jack, I had a stint in public practice at a mid-tier firm working with a client list of just over 100. So not naive enough to think I could jump back into the accounting world, but I do have a baseline understanding and appreciation for what goes on behind the scenes.
I feel you in terms of not so naive. Thanks, guys. Great to have you all here. I know you bring a ton of relevant experience to this topic. Before I get into the nitty-gritty of what we're covering off today, I guess just to set the scene a little bit more around the series and why we're here. As I mentioned earlier, at Mayday, where I work, we're built for larger Xero businesses, and we often hear talking to those customers that they're dealing with a couple of key questions that tend to always be on their mind. One is Xero still the right accounting platform for me? And if so, how long is that going to be the case? Do I need to start looking at the ERP world? Obviously, we want to answer those questions as part of the series as a whole, each topic breaking that down into smaller parts, because we know from feedback that the ERP move is horrible, hectic, expensive, and that's before 58% of those implementations actually fail. So we've coined the term ERP peace of mind, and that's what we want this series to deliver you, which is the peace of mind of knowing that you can scale with Xero into your growth phase as you grow your business, as you go multinational, as you grow your team and your challenges as well. So the series is designed to be helpful, hopefully, to the vast majority of you who are here today. It's not a product demo. It's not product marketing. I'm not wearing a t-shirt that says Mayday. Cale's not wearing a t-shirt that says Weel. We're here to right the misconception that you can't scale with Xero into your growth phase. But equally, it's not about overcorrecting and pretending that Xero is the right app for everybody. We know that there's a line in the sand. There's situations, challenges that are bigger than Xero and bigger than its ecosystem. We just think that there's a little bit of a misconception as to where that point in the journey is, and that businesses can be going a lot further in their growth phase with Xero as their accounting platform. So with that all being said, the agenda for today is very simple. We'll obviously get into the nitty-gritty details. We'll discuss specific situations that our panel have been through here, but we want to firstly delve into what Xero does really well in the space of spend management. We then want to delve into the key challenges that you begin to experience as you grow your team and business on Xero, how you can leverage the Xero ecosystem to go further, and then discuss when an ERP solution might actually be the only or the right fit for you. I'll then ask everyone to share some top tips, advice, those bits and pieces, and if we have some time at the end, which we should, we'll get into the Q&A as well. So I might leave my introduction and kind of introducing the session there and dive in. So Cale, firstly, I wanted to throw to you to kind of define for us spend management. I think it seems like a broad topic. So how do you define what is spend management? What does that encompass from your side?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, obviously in the session, we'll have time to kind of probably dive into a bit more detail. So I'll keep it high level for now. I think spend management is a relatively new term in the industry. I'd presume that most people, if not all attending today, are very familiar with expense management. And it's like, what's the difference between spend management and expense management? The key difference is spend management and spend management tools are kind of going to do all of or everything that you would expect from an expense management platform. So the ability to upload receipts for expenses, code them, review them, approve them, feed them into an accounting system. Where spend management really differs and creates a ton of efficiency is it has essentially inbuilt the payment capability. So that might be the ability to issue, freeze, cancel, and essentially manage corporate cards from the same system, process and pay bills, and of course, reimbursements and expense claims can be automatically paid from a single platform rather than relying on multiple bank accounts or corporate cards and bank feeds and everything. You can kind of do it in a single all-in-one platform rather than using, multiple tools to get the job done.
Perfect. Cool. No, I think that sets it scene very well. And we'll get into using a spend management system later. Tyler, I wanted to begin though with adding on a system for this. Just talking about Xero's capabilities. What do you see as the things that Xero can do really well for a business in this space?
Yeah, I like the basics that Xero does. It makes things very simple. I'm a big fan of how clean they make paying a bill and sending out a remittance advice. The bill function for quite a few entities works really well. You can add like a custom email. You can throw your logo on it, and a lot of us in the Xero ecosystem almost take that for granted. But I've worked with larger ERPs, and I remember a system called Deltek that we couldn't send out a basic remittance advice with any attachment from a defined email. Like they will, their advice was to do it kind of one by one. And the other one, it does really well is good audit trails. You can see who loaded the bill or loaded the expense at what time. You can edit it if, the GST was wrong, which happens all the time. And the other one I like, their Xero Expenses app. It's cheap and cheerful. Like it doesn't really have an approval flow on it, but it works. Like you can get people loading an expense reimbursement on their phone, coding it, and you can pay it, although be it via an ABA. It's a bit more of a manual process than what Cale was talking about before with the app partners. But for some smaller entities, it can actually be a very good, reliable system that's pretty intuitive and easy to use.
I mean, you kind of point out for smaller businesses, and I think that's important because we'll get into the pains of the larger side. I mean, Natalie, from your end with the clients you've worked with or your own experiences here, how far have you seen it go? How far have businesses been able to scale with just Xero as their primary, area that they're managing spend, bills, invoices, approvals, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I guess backing off what Tyler said, it's pretty much, it has the ability to do everything until you get to a point where approval processes are pretty important. And also there's a whole heap of, I guess, people in the business that you're not familiar with. Maybe things are changing, you're growing to the point where there's more remote people and things like that. You don't have the visibility over it. So it's more around the process. I say, like, simpler, smaller businesses that need a process, it kind of gives you the process. Whereas if you need something a lot more robust and across, reducing risks and automating things and having the ability to control more areas of it is when you need to look at something different.
I so agree. Like my time in CFOs, like land was just, it's so hard to know if the expense is legit. And I lost so much time, like, hunting to try to find if it was approved and setting up those processes. Like, 10 years ago, like those approval flows, they just weren't as easy for small and medium businesses to kind of get up and running. Like, they were kind of pocketed to the Microsoft and SAP businesses that had custom flows.
So is it I mean, maybe Cale, you can speak to this. Is this a process problem or pain, or are we talking about an efficiency gain that comes with the, looking at how you can better a Xero setup?
Yeah, I think spend management always starts with the policy and the process. And really what you want to be doing when you're looking at app partners to solve problems is like, who's the best place to help you implement the policy or the process? So yes, it's a policy and process thing, but you want to be really doing your due diligence when you're looking at solutions to help solve these problems, at like, which is the best that allows you to implement your policy and processes. And, there might be some tools that are a little bit rigid and they dictate how the flow works, whereas others add a bit more flexibility and customization to match kind of what you might already be doing, but, kind of improve the efficiencies without too much change management internally.
Yep. No, that makes sense. So, I mean, we've spoken a little bit around what Xero does well so far. We've kind of defined spend management a little bit. We've had a bit of a chat there about the difference between the process and automation side. So, Natalie, you kind of alluded to some of the challenges that you begin to have as you grow. Tyler, you kind of touched on it as well, around the team growing, more remote people, less visibility. Are there any other key pain points or challenges that, if people are listening in right now, that they might be starting to see or starting to have, if Xero is their primary point of call for this?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably the key is controlling where the spend is and the visibility across that. Like, if you want to be proactive around what they're allowed to spend on and things like that. Also, the time management from the accounting team or the finance partner. There's a significant amount of time lost in chasing receipts and also fixing, I guess, errors from people who are non-accounting or non-financial and putting things in the wrong places or not claiming GST, like Tyler said. But one of the other big things I see is the oversight around working within the banking institution to be able to deliver the outcome that you're trying to achieve efficiently. And now, like, I think I've had my credit card frauded twice this year. My business card, so managing anything like when something's expiring, all of those things. There's a lot there. I mean, I can keep going, but
And the amount of bank forms I used to have to do. I remember I was a financial controller at like a law firm, and like trying to get like a new partner, like a credit card, I hated the forms. It was 10 pages. I had to do so many, instead of just documenting and verifying our company, or it was a partnership at that time, you know, I had to go in and document and verify this person, which was just so much more painful. Like that time cost to finance team was huge. But the other one on that, Natalie, I think, is I also look at, like, you've got the big wins, and then you've got like the little happiness wins. I've said this to Jack before in the past, but I did a 6-month installation of like a new finance and job tracking system and timesheet system for this design business. And everyone was like, yeah, good job. You know, I was working, you know, 5 days a week, many times till like 9 o'clock to try to get it in and working. And the biggest happiness I gave to people was because I changed expense management or expense reimbursements from paper and Excel scanned on a photocopier to, you know, back then it was Xero expenses because, you know, Weel and the other competitors weren't in the market. And they were just like, thank you so much. Like, I don't have to spend an hour and a half on a Friday scanning expenses to get the money back that I paid for myself, you know, and then you're probably going to take 3 weeks to process it and pay it. And so, like, you know, systems like Weel that automatically pay it. Like my team had an expense reimbursement today. I approved it, I marked it for paid, and it's already gone out the door. That speed of efficiency and happiness, or speed for us, the happiness for the team members, like, I think that's such a huge win as well. You know, like, it's multifaceted, and it turns the finance team from like you know, why your process is so, you know, tiresome and behind, to, you know, oh, thanks. Like, you know, that's really efficient. You know, I appreciate it.
This is interesting. I mean, we've been talking about the pains and challenges and then the outcomes there, Tyler. Because I was going to go to you, Cale, and say, you know, what do you see? You speak to a lot of different businesses that are coming to you with problems and pain points. We've kind of touched on a lot of those. Feel free to add any others that you see come up regularly. But I mean, what do you see as the difference between what they come to you for in terms of, hey, we're dealing with these challenges, and then what they actually are like at the end of the process saying, this is what I'm actually thankful is resolved, or that maybe it was a completely different gain or loss. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, talking kind of to Tyler's point, we had a really interesting customer who had massive problems with their expense management. And post rolling out Weel, he told us he was like the superhero in the business, because yes, he added value to himself and helped him, but it unlocked so much value to the end users and the employees. Like, they're not accountants. They don't want to be doing expense reports. And so, yeah, you have all of the bells and whistles, but really what our customers love is that we've essentially helped them implement the path of least resistance. What is the easiest, most efficient way for an employee to submit an expense report accurately and in real time? And spend management solutions essentially unlock that.
And Cale, the one for me, the way I sold this into a design business was like, if anyone's in professional services in any business, like accounting, law firms, architects, designers, engineers, anyone that records time, it's the easiest sell I've ever had to go, oh, I can save every single person or let's say half the people in the business, an hour and a half every single month, because they don't have to do an expense form the way we used to do it, you know, and also I can get them up and running in a couple minutes. Like, I just used to do that calculation, and I did like a estimated, you know, opportunity cost of hourly rate, and I halved it. I'm like, all right, let's say 45 minutes is internal and 45 minutes is external. You know, I was talking in the tens of thousands of dollars of opportunity costs that I kind of put back into the business. And it kind of turns the finance team from instead of just looking at costs, we're actually talking about processes that can actually improve the top line rather than just like change the expense line. That one's cool.
I really like the element. It's kind of unusual within, I suppose, you know, the finance department to be able to implement an app that's going to make lives easier for other people in the team. You know, usually it could be a big win or a small win within the accounting department to say, oh, thank goodness we don't have to do that anymore. But the rest of the team would probably rarely notice the difference. But yeah, it's quite a cool element to spend management, the impact that it has on the broader team. Yeah. So if we go to point 3 here, how can the Xero ecosystem help? I mean, obviously we've kind of started to discuss that there are options out there to solve these challenges. Tyler, you know the ecosystem well, you know the App Store well. What's the process here? If someone's listening and saying, yep, I've got these pain points, okay, cool, I'm aware of Weel, but I want to do my due diligence and look at spend management as a whole. What does that process look like? What should people be looking for? Are there a lot of niche options for a whole lot of different scenarios, or are these tools all encompassing? How do you see it?
Yeah, it's a good question. The first thing I always do, every single one of our clients that we help people change systems, right? So if they move to Xero, or we've done some Sage Intacct, some Microsoft, some NetSuites lately, we always look at what integrates to their system, right? And so if they're a Xero business, we just jump on the App Store and type, expense management, or we type inventory. And so if anyone's on the call, I use that App Store as a keyword search. I have a look quickly at how many stars they do. I have a quick look at the reviews. But in my head, what I'm trying to do is match the pain points and the outcomes versus the functions of the system. And then I'm also trying to match it off against cost as well. So, there's systems and apps that work really well for small businesses, and there's ones that work really well for mid, and then there's ones that are targeting the large. So in my head, I try to think, okay, if I'm working with a mid-sized business with say 50 staff, right? In my head, I'm immediately thinking, okay, I've got about 100 bills per month, and I've got maybe 5 to 10 card holders. And then I've got some office assistants that are need a card, or maybe they're doing expense reimbursements as well. So what I try to do is I look at that and I try to figure out, what is the app that suits small, medium, and large. And a good example in the expense management systems, you've got Weel, which is super easy to set up, super clean. There's competitors of Airwallex and ProSpend, and they all do slightly different things. ProSpend very much plays in the big side of the market. They integrate with all the Microsoft partners but Airwallex's integration to, not Airwallex, Weel's integration to Xero is just so seamless. So I kind of think for those mid-sized businesses, I look at what are the competitors, and then I try to reach out. I either do a trial of the system, or I jump on a webinar, or I do a quick demo of how the system can look. I know Cale's team's more than happy to kind of talk to any new customers, and then I look at those functions, and then I really try to figure out what my match is. And Cale, I know this isn't a Weel selling system, but or process, but I've got customers with a whole bunch of subscriptions, and I know Weel's the only business that does subscription cards really, really well. So if I've got one of those businesses, one of our places is a website hosting business, so they do a ton of recurring subscriptions. They're always going up and down in prices. So I'm like, Weel's a perfect fit for you. And then we had another business that was huge and wanted big group kind of activity. So they went with ProSpend. So I'm really reading the App Store, trying to match the points, doing demos. And then the last one is I'm understanding the costs for our business or our client. And everything has a different cost. So I'm looking at how much is it going to be monthly. And then we all know if there's, a bunch of accountants on the call, I'm looking at those, you've got to go into the CEO's office. You've got to go into the board and say, hey, I want to spend $350 a month on this, right? So you've got to look at how do you sell it. So for me, that's the next one. So I start to visualize it, and I start doing the opportunity cost of not doing it as well.
Yeah, that's super insightful. Thanks, Tyler. And I mean, there's so much opportunity here. So, Natalie, I'd be keen to get maybe I don't know if you can kind of pinpoint a client or two who you've had this experience with, where you've been brought the challenges or the pains that they're having in this space, and then been able to kind of work with them to resolve that. What that process looked like. Is it aligned with kind of the process Tyler's talking about? Was there anything in particular that was different? I'd be keen to understand from your side how that works.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the biggest ones I had recently was a client spent, I think they're on month 4 of working with a bank to try and get credit cards to remote workers. Now we had to get the remote workers to go into the bank to try and sign up to get these credit cards. And I then put the case forward as like, how long are we going to wait for this to come off? You know, this is getting ridiculous. So I put it in there and I implemented Weel into the business, and it took like less than 3 days. It was all up and running. Everyone had their digital cards working. I'd trained everyone. It was all to go. And I tell you what, it was pretty quick conversation to have with the exec team to say, well, it's all done now. So why are we still continuing kind of down this road of an old, I guess it's this way that things used to be kind of thing. And now we've got Weel as one of these partners. But in addition to that, when I said, oh, we can actually manage the spend and we can turn things on and off quickly, you know, we've got high turnover in some of these businesses. To be able to switch someone off or change a fraudulent credit card or whatever's going on in a matter of minutes, it just changed like the whole, I guess, the ecosystem around processes, but also time. So it was really key for that drawn out process to turn around and really be delivered. I had another one as well, which is similar, of a business, someone buying a business. So, and that's difficult because the owners of the business are not always the ones working in the business. So that became really straightforward too. So there's a lot of different areas which you can use, but I think it's flipping traditional systems and processes on their head and actually considering what alternatives you have within the ecosystem, but also utilizing, I guess, the Xero resources that are there to assist you to do that.
I feel like
Natalie. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The one of the things you said there about budget control, and I even just typed it into the questions Q&As. The budget control on Weel, we use it in our business. It's so simple. Like we installed it into a not-for-profit organization that used to have 390 bank accounts over the course of a year for these camps they used to do. And their financial controller, like she was a brilliant accountant, like, you know, ran this business like debit, credits, absolutely perfect. But she was spending so much time managing these budgets and trying to see the visuals. And, you know, like Airwallex and Patreon, they do very similar things, but I've always found it a little harder to visualize who has what budget. You know, if Cale's got $1,000 and I know Natalie's like a rogue spender, so I'm going to give Natalie $500 and top it up when I want. That's what we all put into this business. Was in 1 second, she could look at a whole budget screen and scroll down and go, oh, Tim's camp's about to go live, and he's only got 400 left in that budget. That visualization process, you know, you can actually start controlling in a better way as a finance leader your rogue spenders and your trusted spenders with like one screen. And I really like that simplicity of financial control. You know, that's, Cale, as you kind of said before, that's like the spend management play.
And all I was going to say before, and I think to all of the points being made, there's kind of this traditional and modern approach to this. And Cale, I was going to ask you, you know, what do you see as the core benefits of spend management? But I think Natalie and Tyler have spoken a lot about the core benefits that are there. So I might ask you a different question, if that's okay, around, it came up earlier, around the traditional bank versus the spend management kind of platform. I imagine there's a lot of people listening who are with one of the big four banks or another relatively large bank thinking, well, I've got my cards there. What's the, you know, do you get this as, is this an objection that you come across, or a reason why someone wouldn't want a spend management platform? Do they have to move their bank completely? How do you see that traditional v modern approach?
No, not really. Like, we're not going to replace every bank account in the business. We're going to essentially allow businesses to consolidate down. If you think of that example, 10, 20, 50, 100 corporate cards issued through a bank, you know, you can see that visualization on the dashboard in Xero of 100 different bank feeds that you're then trying to match receipts and code expenses to. You can kind of consolidate that in Weel. And I think Natalie made the point, it's like, it's the little things that can make add so much value. And like, even just applying for or canceling a traditional bank card is so painful. And one of our clients said it better than I ever could when we were doing a bit of an interview with them, and he said, I feel like Weel has helped strip the control away from the banks and put it in the hands of me and my team, because they had full control over who gets access to what funds in the business, and they can toggle that up, down, on or off with a couple of clicks of a button, and then all of that streamlined expense reporting that flows off the back of any spend.
No, I think that's really helpful for the conversation to understand that where that line is, I suppose. So yeah, thanks guys. And given time, we've got just over 10 minutes to go. I might move on to point 4, and then we can kind of start wrapping it up. So I don't think we need to talk too much about the ERP side of things, because spend management is a specific area within a much broader context. We've had a couple of sessions already where we've spoken about where, you know, the line is to go from Xero to ERP or ERP back. It is happening a bit more. We are hearing each panel that I've had this conversation with, there's examples of people saying we moved them back off of the ERP to Xero and they've made it work. So, I mean, Tyler, from your perspective, I'm keen to hear from you. You know, how do you see spend management as a reason for needing to move to ERP versus staying on Xero? Are there certain challenges or complexities that you're going to get to with any Xero add-on that might mean that's not going to cut it?
Yeah, we get asked this question a lot, because a lot of our businesses are either large groups or larger Xero entities or non-Xero entities, you know, figuring out if that can work. You know, I often say to people, and this isn't with bias, this is really just trying to look after finance teams, is, you know, I try to get people to give me a reason to leave Xero or not be Xero. Because on average, they'll be 20% faster if they're using Xero than another system, you know, especially like a larger ERP. And if you really automate, you can get down to 40% faster, because your bank feeds are better, your integrations are better. But then there are some occasions, you know, where an ERP does make sense. And, you know, the Xero limits are soft, which is like 2,000 invoices per month. You know, I have broken Xero twice. You know, one time was when we had too many inventory items, like an app partner pushed in too many inventory items and that slowed it down. But then we also worked with a milk wholesaler that had 4,400 supplier bills in a month, and they could still run a report, but they couldn't run their BAS. So volume is probably one of the most interesting plays. You know, like you can go over the 2,000 in a month and Xero still works fine. But if you're consistently 4,000 and up, you do notice a change. The second one where an ERP can be really good, you know, and it is a big discussion, is if you've got like a lot of, you know, detailed inventory and like purchasing controls there. Systems like DARE and Approval Max work fantastically, you know, in the Xero environment. But there are certain businesses, you know, that do suit an ERP. They are typically on that manufacturing and retail side, if they're sizable as well, because I've found they are typically a single organization that are large, that are looking to grow, and they've got, you know, we all know this in retail businesses, they've got high volume invoices. So that's where I look at it. But honestly, utilizing Sin7 Core, you know, for inventory, like I've put so many invoices and sales invoices through that. And like, it just stands up. It's still, I think, one of the nicest inventory systems I've ever used. So, you know, again, like there needs to be a pretty solid reason to move off, because you are doubling your subscription costs and your installation is probably going to be 4 times more than a Xero plus apps.
No, awesome, Tyler. Thanks for that. I think that probably is all we need to touch on from an ERP side. In a couple of our in the Optimizing Xero for Scale session, we did have Regan Ashworth, who spoke specifically to the Xero limits as well, if you're interested in that, and how the ecosystem can help to circumvent those. I mean, the idea there is really that you don't necessarily need every bit of data inside your accounting platform. You need enough to do your relevant reports. But, you know, if we're talking a Shopify integration, those kinds of things, a lot of that data can actually be housed in Shopify, and you get your daily summaries pushed through. Those kinds of bits and pieces are worth being aware of. And not every app partner integrates the same way with Xero. So keep an eye on who does it really well and efficiently and doesn't overuse your Xero platform, and others who might just push every single bit of data through, and that's going to, create challenges sooner rather than later. So I might end the top 4 points there, the key agenda for today, and just throw to each of you now for just kind of a top tip or top takeaway from today that the audience can leave with. And then if there's any other questions, we'll go to that. So Natalie, if I can go to you first, any key bit of advice or something that you really felt nailed home the point today?
Oh, I think for businesses considering their move forwards, it's always really important to map out where you are now, where you want to head. And if you're scaling in particular, what does that look like so that you can integrate what's required and the most important things for your business, because the business next door is going to be completely different. So really understanding your needs and your requirements before you make any decisions, and focusing exactly what Tyler said. We, as CFOs, we can't help ourselves. We will always do a feasibility analysis and that kind of thing, cost benefit, consideration of features over other platforms before you make the decision. And the key with that is just get people to help you out. If you're in a position where you're not sure, ask for help, because there's a lot of people out into the system of, like, let alone the ecosystem, but that know what they're doing and can help you, because these decisions shouldn't be made lightly when you're scaling.
I think it's a good point. I've spoken to so many people who aren't aware of the options that are out there and what can be dealt with. So, don't feel like you're on your own trying to figure it out. Stuff like this is why it exists. Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Natalie. Tyler, I'll go to you, then Cale, I'll throw to you.
Yeah, for me, I really like when I was in the CFO and head of finance role, or just in the financial accountant and management accountant role, is I want to know enough to be dangerous. Like, I want to keep my tax knowledge as up to date as my tech knowledge. So I go to webinars, I do demos with new products, and I keep my knowledge going of where the market is going. So I've always tried to keep my finger in the pie of what's happening technology wise. And especially, it's really hard sometimes in the financial controller role, because everyone's just trying to sell to you, right? And so when you're being sold to, you need to actually know the comparables so you can actually tell, oh, that suits my business versus this one doesn't. And a really easy example is Go Cardless doesn't work for not-for-profits, but there's a whole bunch of direct debit apps that do, right? So, I know we had a not-for-profit question before, and that's a really good question, but there are a bunch of nuances in each of the apps. You don't have to spend all day every day, but keeping your ear to the ground on what's happening and attending free things can just make you a really top tier accountant, I've found.
And to that point, it was mentioned on one of our other sessions, but I think it was perfectly said that if you looked 2-3 years ago for a solution to something and you're not keeping up to date, there's a good chance that problem's been solved now. That's the beauty of the ecosystem, and that is why you need to stay involved and stay up to date, because what you might be looking for or what you were looking for may now actually have a solution. So being aware of what all the different systems can do is hard, but hopefully it can save you a bunch of time. So yeah, Cale.
Even the same system too, Jack. So Weel's changed slightly as well since I first started using it, and to the better point.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, exactly. I mean, Xero is a big company now, and you can't expect the level of release that maybe if you were there in the early days that you get used to. It's a big platform. They don't move that quickly anymore, but the ecosystem does. So yeah, if you've signed up to a few add-ons, most people probably only use 20%, 30% of the apps that they're paying for. You can get so much more by keeping up to date. So yeah, good point. Cale, top tip from you.
Look, maybe I'll just second that. The pace at which software companies are building and releasing functionality is so much faster than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So yeah, if you haven't reviewed systems across any area of the finance function for kind of 2 or more years, it's probably worth investigating a little bit there. But in terms of top tip, I'll probably bring it back. I do think that spend management starts with the policy. So the spend policy is the right, employees have a right to spend business money, and it outlines what they can and can't spend on. But with that right comes the responsibility of acquitting expenses accurately and timely. Look, shameless plug, letsweel.com. We do have a completely free expense policy template. So if you're due for an update or a review on that, head to our website and download it. But I think if you can get the policy right and create that kind of behavioral and cultural shift in the business, then implement the technology that is the vehicle behind the policy, you should save a truckload of time when it comes to month end.
Man, I've never thought of it that way. I've installed so many things without an expense policy, but maybe I should have done it the other way around when I started a new job. Maybe that's good. It's a good point. Yeah. It's so hard coming into a business, man, because like 9 out of 10 businesses, the expense policy is either 80 pages, no one reads it, or it doesn't exist. You know, it's like, oh, Tim approves Sally's expenses and Peter approves, Simon's, and you're like, okay, cool, all right. So it's a good point, Cale.
Cool, guys.
I mean, oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're right. Go for it.
I was just going to say, don't overcook the expense policy. Like, just share it with the company. You don't need to get anyone to sign anything. When they onboard, including their onboarding docs, like, don't overcook it. Just make sure that it's clear and concise. And then, you can kind of create a bit of a cultural shift when it comes to expense management.
Well played.
Cool, guys. Like, so much in this, particularly from my end, I don't necessarily have a top tip, but I think a key takeaway from the conversation was very much around just how the setup is like the traditional banking approach that we're used to. It's so different to that, where you own it. The forms aren't there. The process to go visit the bank isn't there. You can set up the cards you need for the people you need overseas, in the country you're working in, wherever you need it, and it'll happen in an instant. And I just think that is that just feels like a game-changing element to having this kind of solution alongside your traditional banking platform, whoever you might be with. So thanks, guys, for coming. It doesn't look like we've got any other questions. If you do have a question now, chuck it in the chat. I'll just quickly go over the upcoming sessions after today. So tomorrow we've got automating AP operations. So come along to that one if you're big in your AP. We've then got executing complex HR and payroll, which will be a great session. It's our only session focusing on HR and payroll, so it'll be all encompassing. And then we've got enhancing multi-entity consolidations too. So if you're a multi-entity business, you're reporting at the moment and you're trying to consolidate stuff, maybe using Excel, you want it to be better, definitely jump on that one. And if you haven't registered for any of these sessions, you can do so at apacenterprise.cfotechstack.com. And if you're not subscribed to CFO Tech Stack as well, cfotechstack.com is where you can do that. So thanks, Cale, Natalie, Tyler. Really, really appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for coming. Hope that was valuable.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
No worries. See ya.
Thanks, guys.